Hello guys, I'm Timothy Earl, and welcome back to another video here on Baseball Talk with the Earl Brothers. And we're going to do another weekend recap, but we're going to do something a little bit different because instead of going over D1's rankings, I came up with some on my own. We're going to try to kind of power through some of these. We're going to try to go and give each team about a minute, and we'll go from there. I've got honorable mentions and then a top 25. Let me know what you guys think of my rankings down below. I'll have a cool graphic that I make up in a little bit. So make sure you guys follow us on social medias to see that. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of it linked down below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. I wanted to start off because what I did was I went and I kind of went and looked at all the teams. I went through each conference and was getting some of the teams and kind of built it. And I ended up coming with a pool of 27 teams that I felt like could be ranked. And then I kind of went from there. I have two honorable mentions. Those are going to be Cincinnati and Oregon. Cincinnati 13-4 in the Big 12. They are number 5 in the RPI, number 13 strength of schedule so far. And I looked at them. They are coming off of 6 straight wins. Granted, they were against Austin, PA, Western Kentucky, and 4 against UC San Diego, which is 4-10 this year. So, and that's why I didn't rank them quite yet. But this is actually the only Big 12 team that I'm going to be mentioning in the video is Cincinnati. Watch out if they have a good week coming up. I think they can definitely get into the top 25, along with the Ducks of Oregon. They are 12-3 this year. They have played a lot of home games. They are 8-1 at home. Their RPI is at 30, a 98 strength of schedule. They just haven't really played anybody. If they would have swept Purdue this weekend, I probably would have put them in, but they did lose a game to Purdue. And then they also did lose to Oregon State. But Oregon, just outside, although I did not rank Oregon State either. So Ducks fans, I have you guys ranked a little bit higher than Oregon State at the moment, just because there's some concerns for Oregon State that I have. But those are my two honorable mentions. We're going to get our top 25 started off with a little bit of a mid-major school, and I actually really like this one, UL Lafayette. Louisiana had a really nice week. They are 12-4. They are 13th in the RPI. Now, RPI is just going to tell you like where or the strength of scheduling that teams have played. Since they lost the first 2 games of the season, they are 12-2. They did come off of beating LSU, which I still have ranked. I still have ranked pretty high. And then they went to Dallas Baptist, which is not an easy, that's a really good, solid mid-major school. And they took 2 out of 3 from Dalbap. So they're 12-4. I have them as my number 25 team in the nation. I'm actually really excited about this next one because I feel like I might be a little bit higher on them. My number 24 school is California. From the ACC, they are 13-3 this year. They're sitting at 24 in the RPI, a 97 strength of schedule. I know a lot of people in the beginning of the year were not expecting to see California in the tops. They started off the season 2-3 with losses to twice to Santa Clara and then once to Irvine. Since then, they have won 11 games in a row, including 2 against Irvine, 1 against UC Davis. They swept Sac State, which Sacramento State just took 2 out of 3 from LSU. They beat Cal State Bakersfield, and then they swept San Diego, which is currently 48th in the RPI, and they're a lot stronger of a team than we think. I really like this California team, and they 100% have the opportunity to move up because they have UNC coming up next weekend, and UNC goes to California. We'll head to the number 23 team, and that's going to be Alabama from the SEC. They're currently 39th in the RPI, 14-3 so far this year. They played a lot of games at home, 10-1 at home. They're coming off of a 5-0 week, beating Jacksonville State, Alabama State, and then North Florida. Granted, the best team there was Jacksonville State, who was 40th RPI. So nothing crazy in terms of wins there, but they're taking care of business. Their losses are to Houston, which was a neutral site game, the number 1 RPI team in Southern Miss, and Washington State to begin the year. Alabama is going to be a strong team this season. I think they're going to be good enough to get out of get into a regional, maybe even try to host one. But Alabama is my number 23 school. My number 22 school is also from the SEC, and we're going Kentucky. They're 14-2 to start the year. Tyler Bell finally returned. They had a good week. They went 5-0 this week, granted to Eastern Kentucky and the Citadel. Granted, the Citadel is actually number 57 in the RPI, but they're not going to finish there. But I just thought that was interesting. Now, they have lost 2 games this year to Evansville and Morehead State. Other than that, they have looked fine. And one of the Morehead State was a midweek game. First true test, because my number 22 versus number 23 go up against each other. Kentucky gets a 3-game home series versus Alabama next week. We'll head to number 21, which is another mid-major school in Santa Barbara. And I looked at them. They are currently the number 4 RPI team in college baseball. They're 12-2 to start the year, 10-0 at home, a 14th ranked strength of schedule. Their only losses this year were to Southern Miss, who is currently the number 1 RPI team. And we've mentioned them a couple times. Since then, they have wins against Portland. They swept Portland, beat Loyola Marymount, swept Utah, beat Loyola Marymount again, and then swept Long Beach State. Santa Barbara looks solid. I think they can definitely be a possible host team coming up this year. I do like Santa Barbara. The Gauchos are my number 21 team. And then if you told me, hey, you have an American Conference team in your rankings, I would have told you, hey, it's going to be ECU. It's not ECU. It's UTSA, who has started off the year 13-2. They're 14th in the RPI, 77th ranked strength of schedule, and they have looked really, really good. Their losses are a in-state rival to Texas State in a midweek, and they lost a Sunday game versus New Mexico State. So they did come off of a 3-1 week. They did have a comeback win versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi on Tuesday. They took 2 out of 3 from New Mexico State. I like UTSA as my number 20 team in the nation. I have 2 more mid-major schools in my top 25. The next one up is indeed Coastal Carolina, who just took on my ECU Pirates this weekend. They're currently ranked 92nd in the RPI, and they are 9-6 to start the year. I'm keeping them in here in the top 25 because they showed their depth. Now, they had a 2-2 week, wasn't great. They played NC State this during the midweek. They lost that game 6-4. They kind of lost that one late. And then they play ECU, where they took 2 out of 3. In the first 2 games were very, very close. ECU kind of controlled that last game on Sunday. But Coastal Carolina, big week coming up. They got Wake Forest, and then they go to Appalachian State. So big week coming up. Definitely some room for Coastal Carolina to move up in the rankings. We head back to some bigger schools, and my number 18 is Oklahoma. The Sooners have been very solid this year, 14-2. Their RPI is 38th. Now, keep in mind, some of the SEC schools are not going to have as high of RPIs because where they make up their RPI? In their conference games when they face other SEC schools. Oklahoma's got 2 losses this year. One was to Arizona State in a midweek game. The other one was to Gonzaga on a Sunday. Now, they haven't really played the best of opponents. I'm going to call their best win against TCU, which I don't have TCU ranked either, and then against Dalbap. But they've played a lot of home games so far. They get UTA in the midweek, and then they get their first conference opponent in Texas A&M coming up this week. So we'll see how Oklahoma goes. Definitely some room for them to move up. We go to The ACC with North Carolina State as my number 17 team. North Carolina State is 14-2 to start the year, and they just haven't played anybody yet. That was my main concern, and it shows that they haven't played anybody because their RPI is 160. And I know it's going to be, and their strength of schedule is 287. They have 2 losses. One came to Lafayette, who won their first game against them, and that's a team that's ranked 241 in the RPI, and then Princeton, who's 2-8 so far this year, which is not great. So not to mention, you've got NC State, who's played 3 games outside of North Carolina, and those were the Puerto Rico Classic. So they haven't played anybody yet. They get their first conference matchup this weekend against Boston College, who did just take 2 out of 3 from Miami. So I'm actually really excited for that one. But once again, that one's in NC State. I'm more interested to see what they do the following week against Florida State. But the Wolfpack are my number 17. We'll stay in the ACC, and we're going to go and look at the Who's. We'll look at Virginia, who is currently 19th in the RPI. They are 13-3 to start the year. Strength of schedule sitting at 104 so far. Granted, once again, SEC and ACC schools are going to make up their RPI in conference. So far this year, they really haven't played anybody up until last week, where they took 2 out of 3 from North Carolina and honestly should have swept them in Chapel Hill. And they won the first game 13-3. They won the second game 9-2. They had multiple multi-run leads against UNC in that doubleheader and just could not convert it. But Virginia, very good weekend, taking care of business against UNC. They also split against Charlotte. Charlotte beat them 14-0 in the first game. They came back and won 8-1 in the second game. So ultimately, I'm very happy with the week from Virginia. They're in my number 16 school, and good chance for them to move up. Number 15 is Florida State, who was my projected team to win the regular season for the ACC. Coming into the year, they are 13-2. They currently sit 6th in the RPI with a 23 ranked strength of schedule. They have played 11 games at home, and they've won all of them. The only games that they've lost so far this year came in the Arlington Classic, where they lost to Auburn 8-5 and Nebraska 10-1. This week, they went 5-0, taking care of Jacksonville, Mercer, and Northern Kentucky, sweeping Northern Kentucky. And 3 out of those 5 wins were run rules. So Florida State 13-2. They are my number 15 school. Number 14 will be Ole Miss from the SEC as well. They are 15-2 to start the year with the strength of schedule at 44 and an RPI of 8. They have played so far. Their toughest opponents were Baylor, who's currently ranked 34th in the RPI, and they lost that game in extra innings. And their only other loss was to Coastal Carolina on the Sunday, which was a good bounce back spot for the Chants. They did go 5-0 this week, beating Memphis, North Alabama, and Evansville. Granted, the only good team in that one was North Alabama was the best one at 127 RPI, which once again, RPI really doesn't mean all that much right now, considering like Missouri State's number 10. But they really didn't play anybody, but they did take care of business going 5-0. Ole Miss 15-2 is my number 14 team. Number 13 is Texas A&M, and I think they're back. This is a Texas A&M team that had very high expectations going into last year, and they missed the tournament altogether. I believe they were preseason number 1 going into last year, along with Virginia being preseason number 2, and both of them missed completely out. A&M is 14-1 to start the year with a 23 RPI and a 153 strength of schedule. This week, they took care of Incarnate Word, and they swept Oakland. Now, granted, Oakland's 1-14. Incarnate Word is number 231 in the RPI. Not really impressive with any of those wins. The games I was more impressed with, they took care of business against Arizona State, who was actually running really hot going into that Arlington Classic. And they did take care of Virginia Tech, who's currently sitting 44th in the RPI. Texas A&M is my number 13, and I think that they are definitely on the way of bouncing back from last year. One of my favorite teams coming into this rankings, and I'm gonna be one of the ones that hops on the bandwagon a little bit earlier with them because I know a lot of people from the ACC were not picking them. Give me the Deacs. The Demon Deacons are currently 15-1 to start the year with an RPI of 25 and a strength of schedule of 168. Their only loss came in the first game of the season when they lost 8-2 to Houston. Since then, have rattled off 15 straight wins, including sweeping their first series in conference play against Stanford. Granted, they have not played anybody tough, but they are winning games the way they're supposed to, and they'll have their first true test. I'm excited for them this week. They get Coastal Carolina in Conway tomorrow, and then they'll get Florida State this weekend. So very big matchup coming up for Wake Forest. They're 15-1, and definitely, once again, another team that has the opportunity to move up. Up next is going to be the Tar Heels of North Carolina at number 11. They are 13-3-1 to start the year with a strength of schedule of 139 and an RPI of 61. This is a UNC squad that I think has one of the top pitching staffs in college baseball. They did not have a good first week of conference play. They lost 2 out of 3 to Virginia. But I just think this is a very solid team, and they definitely have the opportunity to bounce back against Cal this weekend coming up. Granted, that is going to be a tricky series because it's going to be in Cal, so you're going to have to travel across the country for that one. So we'll see how they look in that series against my number 24 school in California. But Cal, UNC, 13-3-1 is going to be my number 11. Let's go to the top 10. And my number 10 school, and yes, I've left them up this high because I couldn't really, I didn't feel like I needed to drop them as much as I did. LSU, 12-5 this year, 137th in the RPI, 197 in the strength of schedule. They're coming off of a really, really rough week. They lose to Northeastern on Monday, and that was a 13-10 game. That was 13-1 at one point. Like, that was a blowout, like a real blowout at one point. Then they go and bounce back, right? Nope, they lose to UL Lafayette on the Wednesday game, 7-2. Granted, Lafayette is my number 25 school, so I do like them. They're 13th in the RPI. So they had to bounce back right in the weekend. Well, they bounced back on Friday night with a 15-4 run rule win against Sacramento State, and then they dropped the next two against Sacramento State. It's a blip in the radar to me, and if they struggle this next week coming up, I will drop them for sure. I see a bunch of rankings dropping them all the way to 13. I saw one drop them all the way to 24. I'm not going to be that crazy with it. I'm dropping LSU down to number 10. They go to Vanderbilt coming up this week, which Vanderbilt has also not been great. But you know who has been great, right? My number 9 school, undefeated USC. USC is 15-0 to start the year, number 2 in the RPI, number 40 strength of schedule. And they have looked really, really good. And they've done it with pitching. I believe they have the best pitching ERA in the nation, especially with starters. I believe it's under 2. It is insane. They're coming off of a really good week of beating UC Irvine, which is a really good mid-major school. And then they go into conference play and sweep Illinois. 4-0, 4-0, 5-3. Very controlled, low-scoring games for USC. But most importantly, they're 15-0. And I'm giving them the respect that they deserve. They're my number 9 school. They get Long Beach, San Diego, and Northwestern this weekend. So they might not have as much of an opportunity to move up, but I definitely think they are a top 10 team. Another team I think is in the top 10 is Auburn, who I have at number 8. They're currently number 9 in the RPI with a 31 ranked strength of schedule and an RPI of 9, 13-2 start. Their only losses were to Cincinnati, which was an honorable mention for me, and they lost the first game in 10 innings against Nebraska in that series. This weekend, they took care of business against Sanford and Winthrop. Winthrop is actually pretty solid. Winthrop was 10-2 going into that series. They dropped down to 10-5. Their RPI is 51, so interesting to see that. But Auburn looks really good to start the year, although they really haven't played anybody other than Florida State, who's ranked 6th in the RPI. But I'm waiting. They go to Missouri to start off conference play next week, along with UAB in the midweek. Keep in mind, Missouri is 14-2. I almost ranked Missouri, but did not do it. But Auburn, number 8 in my power rankings. And probably to the most fun school so far this year, my number 7 is Southern Miss. I was high on Southern Miss coming into the year. Their pitching staff is sick. They're 14-2, number 1 in the RPI, number 1 in strength of schedule. They have challenged themselves, and they looked great doing it. They took 2 out of 3 to start off the year against Santa Barbara, who I have as number 21. They have wins against Oregon State, Baylor, Alabama. They took care of business against North Alabama this weekend. Their one loss was to Nicholls State, but that was in a huge letdown spot after their big win against a team that we're going to talk about in a little bit in Mississippi State on Tuesday. That was a 7-6 win last week. I talked about that one in my midweek recap. I'm excited for their midweek coming up this week. They get Ole Miss in Hattiesburg, and then they go to Arkansas State to start conference play. So we'll see how that goes. But Southern Miss is my number 7 school and my number 1 for mid-major schools. All right, now let's get to the heavy hitters. At number 6, I have Clemson. Clemson is 15-1 to start the year. Number 3 in the RPI, 26th ranked strength of schedule, 28th ranked non-conference strength of schedule. They are coming off of a good week where they beat Michigan State, and then they 4-game swept LaSalle. They have lost 1 game this year, and that was to South Carolina. And that was the Friday night game against South Carolina. Other than that, they have looked good. I like that they had a run rule win against Charlotte earlier in the year. They did take 2 out of 3 from South Carolina, which even as bad as South Carolina has been, they're 12-5 with an RPI of 35. So they're not totally garbage. Michigan State is 13-11. They have 2 wins against Louisville and then haven't really won since. So that kind of proves Louisville. But anyways, Clemson, 15-1. They look really good to start the year. They get their first week of conference play coming up at home versus Georgia Tech, which we'll talk about Georgia Tech in a minute. But Clemson is my number 6. What's that coming down the track? It's the Mean Machine in red and black, and that is Georgia as my number 5 school in the nation. Yes, they're 123rd in the RPI. They are 15-3 with a strength of schedule of 237, but this is a school that I'm very high on. So far this year, they have 3 losses. They were to Wright State, which Wright State now has a win against Tennessee as well. They have a midweek loss to Troy in extra innings, and they have a 10-9 midweek loss to Western Carolina. Other than that, they've been destroying everybody. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of their 15 wins are by run rule. So when they have been playing teams, they have been blowing them out. And they've scored double digits in a lot of their games. So their offense is going to hit. They get their first true test. They get Tennessee coming to town this weekend for 3. Definitely interested. I did not rank Tennessee. So that was they're 12-4. But that should be a very fun matchup coming up this weekend. Now, Georgia fans, don't be mad at me. I got your counterpart sitting at number 4 in Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is very similar to Georgia. They're going to hit. They're number 58 in the RPI. They're 14-2 with 177th ranked strength schedule. They really haven't played anybody yet, but boy, are they hitting, and boy, they're winning by a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 run rule wins. And one of them that probably should have been with a 27-4 win. They have and one that was a 25-1 win. that were not ended after 7 innings for whatever reason. So they have a bunch of dominant wins. They did come off of winning 2 out of 3 versus Virginia Tech to start off their conference campaign. But I'm going to buy in on this Georgia Tech team for right now. They get their first real tough one heading to Clemson, who's my number 6 team in the nation. So Georgia Tech, we'll see, definitely has an opportunity to move up. Let's go to Hail State for number 3. Mississippi State is going to be my number 3 school in the nation. 14-2 start to the year. With an RPI sitting at 17 with a 96th ranked strength of schedule. Now, they've challenged themselves twice. You know what? I'll give them 2 good wins. That was against Arizona State and against Virginia Tech. Their 2 tough games were to UCLA and to Southern Miss. They lost both those games by a combined 2 runs. Those are both 1-score games. And they proved in that they can compete in those ones because Southern Miss was in Southern Miss and UCLA was in Arlington, Texas. So 2 really, really good games for Mississippi State that I'm not going to ding them for. They really haven't played anybody yet, but coming up this week, they have Arkansas, which I did not rank Arkansas as well because Arkansas just actually split a series versus Stetson. But they get Arkansas in Fayetteville next weekend for their first true test in conference play. Now, we head to the top 2, which I'm pretty sure people can figure out who the top 2 is. My number 2 is Texas. And I'm not moving them in front of UCLA just yet. We'll talk about UCLA in a minute. Texas is undefeated, 15-0, with an RPI sitting at 7, strength of schedule of 106. They really haven't challenged themselves. I'm going to call one good win was against Coastal Carolina, and that was 8-1 on Friday night. Other than that, their best RPI win up to this point is Baylor sitting at 34. So not really anything crazy. They did run rule UTRGV, which is an interesting one. And they've been run ruling a bunch of teams in their 15 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them were by the way of run rule. And looking at some of these other numbers, all but one game, they allowed 4 runs or less. This pitching staff is absolutely sick for Texas. They get their first true test coming up this week. Texas State in the midweek in Texas State, which is never easy for them. And then 3 at home versus Ole Miss. So definitely some approve it. And if Texas has a really good week, I could definitely see myself putting them at number 1. But until then, my number 1 school is going to be UCLA. UCLA is 13-2 to start the year with an RPI of 12, strength of schedule of 48. Their only losses coming to UC San Diego, who is ranked 55 in their RPI, which is whatever. And they lost to San Diego State in the midweek. They have a 3-game sweep against TCU, which a lot of people have highly ranked. And then they have 3 neutral site wins versus Tennessee, A&M, and Mississippi State. So 3 big SEC schools victories against. And then they start off their conference play sweeping Ohio State in Columbus, including a run rule in the Saturday game. Coming up this week, they get Irvine in the midweek, and then they get to host Michigan for their first home conference matchup of the year. But UCLA is my number 1 ranked team in the nation. That is my top 25 for college baseball. Let me know what you think of my rankings. Obviously, they're subject to change, and they will be different next week. So let me know what you guys thought of those. Who's too high, who's too low, let me know. And that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.